Okay, we are live. Welcome everyone. We'll give everyone a little bit of time just to say hello. We've got a full house today with lots of people, so I'm excited to get this started. I'm just going to do my usual top comment to let people know that they should say hi as they join, so give me just a second. I saw that there were quite a few people put interested. Oh, we've already got 2 people watching apparently. So we should have a great session with lots of eager people there. Here we go, starting to get some hellos. We've got David joining us. Hi, David. We've got a lot of people on mute here, so I want to avoid a lot of feedback, but they'll do a lot of waving. We've got Leslie as well, and Rebecca. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I can see everyone as well giving us some smiles, so I know that we've got lots of people who are excited about today, and as usual, a little bit nervous to get started. So I know that they've always been absolutely amazing. We've got a first time, Lynn is joining us for the first time on a live today, actually. So I just wanted to give a particular shout out to Lynn for kindly joining us there, as I know that it's always a little bit nerve-wracking the first time.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely, Lynn. We've got Will here as well. Good to see you, Will. Wonderful. Well, we have now got 9 or 10-ish people watching. I think there's a couple of people flicking in and out as they start. So I think I'll start with the usual introduction and get in. And as people join, please do keep saying hi. So I'm very excited to be continuing the series that we've been doing for a while now, where we look at one adverse childhood experience at a time. We've done physical abuse, we've done divorce and parental separation, we've done emotional neglect, and I'm excited to touch on a really, really important one today, which is child sexual abuse. And because it's such an important topic, we're going to be including not only the point of view of lived experience with our wonderful members of the Hearts of Ace group here, but also we're joined by the founder of Wave Trust, George Hosking OBE, who will be talking to us a little bit about both the evidence-based side, but also his experience healing child sexual abuse. So we've lost someone there, but I'll keep an eye on the tech to get everyone back. Before we get started, I think it's important to just talk for a second about the possibility of people being triggered whilst we talk about these topics. This is something that happens quite rarely, but as we are touching on a really traumatic experience, we want to be upfront about the possibility. If that does happen, and for whatever reason, there's a few things you can do. First of all, you can really ground yourself, bring yourself back to the present moment, take some few deep breaths in and out. If that isn't enough, you can remove yourself from the situation for a moment, take a quick break, get up, get yourself a glass of water, etc. If that still isn't enough, we are here to give you a bit more support. You can reach out to Hearts of Ace, which is a peer support group. You can do that by emailing Anthula as well, akutsudi@wavetrust.org, or you can give me an email there too. If you text us in the chat as well, we'll keep an eye on that, and we can always support you. George is actually a licensed trauma therapist himself, so he can always jump in there. But if you're looking for really immediate support, you can have a look here. You can write down the information for NAPAC, which is an amazing charity that'll be able to support you there. As I mentioned, this is one of a series of live streams, and as I said, we're looking through all of the adverse childhood experiences one at a time. If you haven't heard about ACEs before, what we're talking about is these 10 experiences that happen during childhood that have a knock-on effect throughout your life. They really impact your neurodevelopmental stages, and they can then impact your mental health, your physical health, your social capabilities, and really how your brain works. So without further ado, I think we're going to go back to seeing everyone's wonderful faces, and we're going to do a very, very brief introduction, just a quick shout out to say hi before moving on to the first question. As I said, we're joined by Lynn today, who is joining for the first time. Lynn, could you say a quick hi?
Hi, everybody. What would you like me to say?
Not at all. Just a quick hello to say hi. She's
Hi.
one of the great members of Hearts of Ace as well. We've got Claire, who's leading the way with lots of great work in Wales. Claire, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hey guys, hope everyone's well.
Thank you. We've got Jay and Angela, who's just jumping in there, joining us from Scotland.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening, everyone.
Wonderful. We've got Rob dropped out momentarily, but was with us earlier, so I'm keeping an eye out on the tech to let him back in when he does. And I know that we might have someone else joining us too who is caught up in traffic, unfortunately. So if you're joined halfway through by the live, don't be surprised. But George, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more, as you're not as frequent a guest on this, and tell us a little bit about how you're involved with Wave and 7030 for context before I get into the first question?
Well, I founded Wave back in 1996 after some horrendous cases of child abuse in London, which really triggered me into a decision which I've never felt as if I made, but felt the decision made me, that I can't live in a world where things like this happen to children and I do nothing about it. And because I have a background in international business and business strategy, I applied that know-how to the question of how to tackle the problems of abuse, neglect, children witnessing domestic violence, etc. And Wave brings a fairly unique approach to this, which is focusing on root causes rather than on just simply trying to alleviate the symptoms. Although, let me say, alleviating the symptoms is crucially important for anyone who's been through any form of abuse or neglect. I've been working with victims of child sexual abuse since about 1998. And I must say it's something that is deeply harrowing for anyone who's been through that. And my heart goes out to all of you, and my absolute admiration for those of you who have the courage, having been through that in your lives, to present yourselves in public and to talk about it. But your courage inspires other people to do the same, because there is life after abuse, as Hearts of Ace are demonstrating so effectively. And our mission is to try and help as many people as we possibly can, both to prevent it ever happening in the first place and then to support people after it happens.
Thank you, George. And I just wanted to say a quick hello as well to everyone else who's been joining and saying hi in the comments, as we've had quite a few people say hi as we go. So because there's so many of us, I think I might full screen it so we can see George a little bit better for the first question rather than see a sea of faces. But George, I wanted to ask you, what are the main issues that came up when you started working with victims of child sexual abuse?
I think one of the most powerful is memories. Memories that people were unable to shake out of their thoughts, that just kept intruding in their life even when they tried to shut them out or forget about them. I remember one person I was working with who had been sexually abused in a children's home by someone he called Mr. Ooper. And he just kept, when I was working with him, talking about this Mr. Ooper, Mr. Ooper. And this was like a real life bogeyman that even now, and I'm talking about an adult who's probably in his 40s when I started working with him, was still terrified of this figure who dominated his life as a child and sexually abused him on many, many occasions in his children's home. Other issues, not being believed is a big one I've come across. People who've been abused, sexually abused, telling people, family members or others, what had been done to them, and then actually, instead of the person supporting them, being shut down, being told not to talk about it, particularly when it's family members that have committed the abuse, not to have it discussed because of the shame it might bring on the family. Being frightened to tell, I know of the consequences of telling can be a major source of fear to people. Will they be seen as being guilty themselves? Will they be blamed? Will they be punished for it? I know one particular case I remember, a boy who'd been abused, reported it by a neighbor, reported it to his mother. The police were called, and while his mother was talking to the police, the boy crept down the stairs. And as he was on the stairs trying to listen in to what his mother was saying to the policeman, she heard her mother say, "If I find this is true, I'll kill him." And unfortunately, the boy, a man when I was dealing with him, thought that she was referring to him, that if she found out it was true, she would kill him. So he climbed up, and whereas he'd been ready to talk about what had happened, he started not saying anything, not responding, not being willing to give evidence against the perpetrator, not because he didn't want to have the perpetrator caught and stopped, but because he thought his mother would kill him if she found out. Fear of being blamed, misplaced guilt is not uncommon. Impact on relationships with other people. Sadly, in some cases, I've worked with people who've had an inability to engage in intimacy in their relationships with a loving partner, because intimacy is so strongly associated with the negative impact of what was done to them by somebody in the past, that it just triggers a reaction which gets in the way of natural loving relationships. And finally, I'd mention post-traumatic stress disorder. I find it very common for the victims to be suffering from anything from mild to severe PTSD as a result of the memories that they were carrying.
Thank you, George. I think that was a really, really informative answer, and I think very glad that you were able to come on and share a bit of insight there. I think I'd love to hear from everyone else on the call today as well about what do you guys think are the most important themes that people need to know about when talking about sexual abuse. Rather than having a free-for-all, I might call you one at a time just to keep things moving a bit more fluidly. Claire, would you be up to going first there?
Yeah, I think it's so important to be able to have somebody that you can go and talk to and share what's gone on. I know for me there wasn't anybody like that, so I kept it locked away for a very long time. And it goes on to not just impact your feelings and relationships, but it also goes on to impact the way you feel about yourself, your self-esteem, your confidence. Building relationships with people for me was just totally impossible. And I know I just felt I didn't know what to do with that information. I didn't know who to speak to. I didn't know if I'd be believed. I didn't know what the consequences were going to be if I did share that. So yeah, I just remember always feeling very embarrassed, like I always felt dirty and ashamed. Yeah, so it was very, very difficult. So I would say that, you know, having someone you can talk to and trust and be able to share, you know, personal information with is very important. And for some of us, we weren't lucky enough to have that safe person around us. So yeah, that would be my input.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much for sharing. And I could see that you know was really hard to say there. So sending you as many virtual support as we can, and you know, as always. And I will say, I know you know this perfectly well, but for anyone else who's watching, if you are a member of Hearts of Race, you are a 70/30 ambassador and ever want to get involved in these live streams, you're always welcome to come on. But also, you know, if at any point you don't feel comfortable anymore, or you know you feel like it's a little bit too much, I'm always here to support you, and you're free to kind of tap out at any moment or kind of change or whatever. So Claire knows that perfectly well because I repeat it to her every time, but just want to make that clear to anyone who might not know that as much. I'm seeing a comment here from Rob in the meantime, talking about how important it is to have a space for children to be heard and teaching resilience. Rob, I know you disappeared from the live stream, so if you're struggling with tech, if you could drop me a comment, that would be wonderful. But thanks for contributing in whatever way you can. Jay, would you mind sharing next?
Yeah.
Rob put a message into the chat on Messenger saying that Noah's iPad has got a adult restriction on it, so it'll not let him come on.
Thanks,
So
Angela.
that's
I'll have a
just-
look whilst
yeah.
Jay's sharing. Jay, if I don't look like I'm paying 100% attention, I'm dealing with the tech in the background, but thank
No,
you
that's-
for sharing.
That's fine. It's you know, the message that I want to get across is a message that why I got into this. When I found out that it was because I had been sexually abused by my grandfather, that and no the murder of my dad, that was causing me all my masculinity problems, all my embarrassing problems, my like all the problems. I had flashbacks, nightmares, you know. When I got told it was CPTSD, I went on a mission to understand it, and I come across Nadine Burke Harris, I come across Bessel van der Kolk, and I researched and I came across George Hosking OBE, OBE for work with children with abuse of all kinds, and I thought, you know what, that's where to get a voice about is with somebody like that. And the message remains the same, you know. It's people do not have they really don't understand the long-term impacts and effects of what happens to somebody after the things that happened to me. And you know, I can't talk for women, but I know that men don't talk, and there's stats that are scary stats that men would rather take their life than talk out. And so I chose to talk out because I feel that the society just doesn't understand what it's doing to men or women survivors, and the long-term health implications as well. It's not just the mental health implications; it's the physical health implications, which I've got a couple of as well. And the scariest one was that the start that 20 years is taking off your life straight away. If you got 4 or more races, and that really stuck out to me. And when I found out that, you know, I spoke with George, and I found out that 2 million kids across the UK were still suffering from child abuse and maltreatment, and that figure hadn't moved since like World War II. I was just astounded, and I thought, you know, Wave Trust are doing something about this. You know, I want to be the helping name of this.
Thanks, Jay. I think that's a really important point. And I know that we've spoken about this before, about that distinction sometimes between men and women. I think there really is that unfortunate phenomenon of men not feeling that there's a safe space to speak out, not feeling there's a culture where they can speak about what they're going, you know, what's going on in general, never mind something quite this big. So I have to say I'm really glad that you're here with us to lead the way on that, because I think it's making a difference to so many people's lives on a day-to-day basis. Angela, would you mind going next, as you're already unmuted there?
Of course. What I found is I managed to get justice, and I felt that would be it. If I got justice, the sexual abuse that happened to me would go to jail with my abuser, and it was the biggest disappointment ever because it didn't go away. It's still there. He might be behind bars, but the scars are still there. And I had it all built up in my head that if we won the court case, then I could move on with my life. And I felt as though whatever happened was just going to disappear out of my mind. It doesn't quite work like that. That is the long-term effect of what happens to you if you've been abused as a child. And I've had help, and don't get me wrong, the help has helped, but I'm still on that journey, and I will fight on that journey. And the Wave Trust and the Hearts Ace are helping me so much to be around like-minded people and to know that they've got my back and that we're all like-minded people. There's no judgment, and if I need anyone, they're there. And that to me is priceless. Absolutely priceless. So, and as I say, I never give up hope, no matter what the subject is. 18 miscarriages, and I never gave up hope, and I went on to have another 4 kids. This battle will not beat me. I will win this battle, and I will not give up hope. But the long-term effects, migraines, consistent migraines, my weight, I can't keep any weight on, which then leads other people to point at me, and they've got their own opinions of me. But I've actually overcame that, what other people think, because I've got true people who I know what they're talking about, who believe in me, and they know me. So the people in the street are irrelevant of what they think of me, because the other ambassadors, the Hearts ACE officers, they've gave me that courage to forget what anybody else is saying now. And I just want to tell everybody that don't give up hope.
Thank you, Angela. I think that message is one that we mention every live stream, and you never let us forget it. And I think that's absolutely right, because it's the most important message out there. I've seen Will is contributing to the message of hope with this great message here. Hold on, pain ends. I think it's quite a wonderful way of remembering it there. That was worth flagging up your brain to do that. But thank you, Angela. I think absolutely you have shown some incredible strength in carrying on this fight in many different ways. So thank you for sharing today. Lynn, did you want to come in as well on what you think people should know about this?
Well, I'll skim over my ACEs. But I do suffer from what's called complex PTSD, same as what Jay's got. What I found is you tend to be in denial for a little while, like it wasn't that bad. So once you get a bit older and it hits you, that's when the anxieties. I think anxiety, that's my biggest scar, is anxiety. I'm looking for George for a miracle cure. But severe anxiety. I've had 2 breakdowns after my mum died, after my dad died. Complete breakdown. Went back to like being really very, very ill. But my journey's been a long one, because it started in 1994. My recovery started then, and that's where I follow on Angie's hope, because you can get through it. You can get stronger. There's help out there. Just get pointed in the right direction, because if you go for that help, you will get stronger. I do suffer from anxiety and depression if I have a bereavement, for example, but mostly I feel I'm a successful person, and I feel I've beaten it almost. Does that help? I'm new.
No, absolutely, Lynn. That's really helpful. And I know we often talk about the fact on all of these live streams that you can build resilience at any point in your life. It's easiest to build it in the really, really early years. It's easier to put the foundation right from the start than it is to build on a rocky foundation later in life. But that doesn't mean that you can't build resilience in many, many different ways. Mm-hmm. And it's never just about the individual either. The whole support network around them is a key part of resilience as well. And I think you're talking there about a great example. Recovery has been a long journey for you, and I'm sure you're still in it in the same way that Angela was describing as well. But it is absolutely possible in many different ways. And I think that might be the perfect segue onto my second major question for George. So I will take advantage of that. And George, I would really love to hear how you were able to help victims of child sexual abuse in a little bit more details. We talked kind of about the main issues, but I'd love to hear about the work you've done in this scenario. Let me just full screen you there again. There you go.
And I even remember to come off mute this time.
Perfect.
I think the thing that has the greatest impact, I mean, firstly, giving people the freedom to talk about something. A lot of people who discussed their child sexual abuse with me had never told anyone else before that. It had been something that had been locked up inside them for shame, for guilt, for fear of consequences, for fear of not being believed. And one has to create a very safe environment for people that they are willing to talk about these things. So I often, when I'm working with people, I'm often exploring and understanding their childhoods. And one doesn't jump quickly into the issue of child sexual abuse. One often arrives at it after you've explored many other aspects of their childhood, what life was like at home, what issues there were in their life when young, that kind of thing. And then create a space where someone can actually talk about it if they want to. And I'm sure not everybody has told me about it who suffered it, but a lot of people have, and have told me it was the first time they'd ever told anybody. And I think that comes from creating that relationship of trust. The second thing really is, and this is something that is rather specialist that I've been trained in, is taking away the terror of those memories. And this needed quite a bit of preparation. People often talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, as a way of dealing with trauma. I was trained in CBT, but I don't find CBT very effective in truly removing post-traumatic stress disorder from people. It is, however, very valuable in dealing with other issues like anger problems or things like that people may have that can have a powerful grip on people. So I very often start by working with those kinds of issues before I come round to the more sensitive type of stuff, such as the really deep embedded, horrifying and horrific memories. There is a process that I have more frequently used than any other. I'm trained in two methods. The one I have used more often than the other is called prolonged exposure therapy, or sometimes implosion therapy, in which essentially what you do is you take the power out of the memories, and you do it in a way that is quite painful to go through, I'm afraid, but incredibly satisfying for those who've been through it. It involves the individual consciously choosing to re-experience the horrible memory at very, very elevated intensity, but in a scenario where they are totally in control of it, where it's like they have a dial, and I actually use that image with them. So they are able to turn the dial up or turn the dial down according to the intensity of that terrible memory that is running their lives in many cases. And when it's done in a very supportive, very loving, very safe environment, what happens is when people have reached a certain extremely high intensity and held it for a period of time, effectively the energy becomes dissipated, it runs out. There comes a point where they can't actually continue to hold that memory or that feeling at the intensity that has gripped them for sometimes decades beforehand in their life. And then I take them through a further stage of the process where they start getting rid of the memory. We do this through breathing exercises, through essentially sending that memory out into the universe to a place of total love, total peace, total understanding, which is ready to receive the memory from them. Because that memory existed for a purpose. It existed to protect people. Our bodies set up these memories as a way of sheltering us from the full reality of what we're going through. But that protection is no longer needed when somebody is talking about something that may have happened in childhood and they're now adults. And they're able, once they understand that, to let go of the memory, to wave goodbye to it, literally, to send it off on its journey to the far end of the universe. And then afterwards feel that the memory has gone. And sometimes it goes in one session. Sometimes it needs 2 sessions. It seldom needs 3 sessions. It usually is 1 or 2 sessions. And the person typically describes themselves feeling completely different afterwards and looking different. And I've had relatives and others say, what's happened to, I'll invent a name, Jean. What's happened to Jean? Her face has changed. Her body shape has changed. There's something completely different about her. And it's that freedom from that burden that's actually been dominating that person for years, that when it goes, it just enables a new aspect of themselves to come to the fore. So that's probably the most satisfying element of what I do. There is another technique I also use, which is actually much more frequently used in Britain than the other technique, which is more common in the United States. I mean, more common than Britain in the United States, not necessarily more common than EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a very strange process, which probably because of lack of time I won't go into unless you decide at some point you want me to, Isabel. But it involves somebody, for example, holding a finger in front of a person's nose and then moving it from left to right, from one side to side, while the other person follows it with their eyes. It sounds crazy. And when I was taught that, when I took my advanced diploma in the management of psychological trauma, my initial feeling was this is mumbo jumbo. This is nonsense. This cannot possibly work, until I was actually a patient on the receiving end of the treatment. And to my great surprise, it did work. I think I now know why it works, but at first glance, it just looks like something that shouldn't work. But strangely enough, it does. But it's very slow compared with the prolonged exposure therapy. So somebody might need 15, 20 sessions or something of EMDR to get rid of something that might be rid in 2 or 3 sessions of the more challenging prolonged exposure therapy.
Thank you, George. Those are some, I think, really interesting insights into different possible ways to heal that I know not everyone today will have heard of. I wonder, before moving it back to the wider room, if you could tell us what your most satisfying result was within this work.
I think, if you allow me, I'll mention 2 things, but I think probably the most satisfying was the person I was talking about who was terrified of Mr. Ooper, who just, it was like this Mr. Ooper was in his mind all the time. He went to bed and thought about Mr. Ooper. He remembered what Mr. Ooper had done to him in the care home and did what he'd done to other children and so on. And it was like, he brought it up with me, but he was bringing it up with me in a state of terror, like, this is something that I'm telling you about, but I don't really want to talk about it because I can't stand the thought of even thinking about the man. By the time we'd finished working together, he was in a position to give a statement to the police about his abuse at the hands of Mr. Ooper. And Mr. Ooper was actually prosecuted by the police. They found other victims of the care home who were willing to speak about what had happened. And that was very satisfying to know that the chap I was working with found that release, that justice, the feeling that finally Mr. Ooper had to face up to what he'd done. And at the same time, he also learned, as my client, he learned to understand more about Mr. Ooper and why he did what he did. And that helped him too, understanding why sometimes people commit these crimes. And that's never to excuse it, because it's an inexcusable and horrific crime. But everything happens for a reason, including people sexually abusing children. And understanding that made it much easier for him to put Mr. Ooper behind him. The other thing I just want to briefly mention is some of you will have heard of Vincent Felitti, who was the originator of the study of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, a Hollywood music producer for films in Hollywood, a man called Stephen Endelman, went to Vincent Felitti in the United States and told him that he'd made a film about his own abuse in a school in England. He was English, although he was now living in America. And he'd made a film about this experience, and he wanted to bring this film to the United Kingdom and publicize it quite widely. And the film was called A Boy, a Man and a Kite. And it was an absolutely brilliant film. And Vincent Felitti recommended that he talk to me, and WAVE supported him in the launch of that film in Britain. And I think you've got, Isabel, and we can share it, a press release that came out afterwards, where the person who wrote the press release said that they gave it 5 stars out of 5 as a film. But if they had been allowed to, they would have given it 6 stars out of 5. It was it's a wonderful film. It's sensitively done. It really gives you a sense of the environment of the school and the feeling of being trapped, of not having any escape, and the charm that the school teacher used with his victims, but the fear at the same time that the victims had of this man who even came and visited their home and charmed his parents in his home during the school holidays. You know, all the while he was sitting there thinking about the things that were being done to him, but too frightened to tell his parents about it. So it's a wonderful film. If any of you get a chance to see the film, I strongly recommend it, and it has served its purpose of encouraging lots of people who've suffered sexual abuse to come forward, report it, and do their very best to get justice, just as Angela has also done. And Stephen Endelman did succeed in getting his former school teacher charged and convicted and sent to prison for years of abuse against children in his school in England.
Thank you, George. I have put, so let's get us all back on the same screen there. I've put the link to the press release in the comments as well. If anyone wants to see that, we've got the link there. So I won't keep it up on the screen, but do have a look through the comments if you're looking for that press release, or have a search for the film there. But thank you, George, for sharing. Do any of you want to come in on anything George said there about healing child sexual abuse? Lynn, go ahead.
Sorry, I can't read my own writing. The exposure therapy, I've never heard of that before, so I'd be interested in finding out more. The EMDR is the treatment that I've received, and it's very, very, I know exactly how it works. It's the rapid eye movement, and it gets into your subconscious mind, and both of these are doing the same thing. You're having to relive it, and you're going to attach the emotion to the memory, and then it has no power after that. But I found EMDR very successful for me. But the problem is, what if you've got lots of traumas?
Well,
are you with me?
A lot of people I've worked with have several traumas.
More than several. Several weeks, maybe.
Okay. Well, my experience is you have to deal with them separately.
Yes, I know.
And I just would start in a scale if I were working with somebody. So having anger, shame, guilt, fear labeled on top of the history of abuse is not uncommon.
No.
And I begin with prolonged exposure therapy because I always experience that people have the trauma located somewhere in their body.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think cognitive behavioral therapy is actually the best treatment for PTSD, because it's all about the mind, and actually trauma is embedded in the body. I know how to find whereabouts in the body trauma is located. And if you've got 5 trauma, here you say you might have 50, Lynn, but if you've got 5 traumas,
unfortunately,
they tend to be located in different places in the body. The most common place in my experience is the pit of the stomach, The chest is another very common one. The back of the neck, the back of the shoulders, the forehead, but it can be anywhere. It can be your fingers, your toes, anywhere in the body. I find where the trauma is located, and then I work with that specific trauma. And then when the person feels that that one has really been exploded, it no longer has its power, we would move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's using the exposure therapy method. It is painful. It's painful for me as the therapist, and it's painful for the individual.
So is EMDR though. EMDR works exactly the same. You've got to feel the pain to get through it.
Yeah. But it is gentler by comparison.
Is it?
And yes, it is. Yes, you're quite right. I mean, in effect, EMDR is a kind of very, very mini version of prolonged exposure therapy.
Yeah.
That's why it works. But as I say, my experience is it just takes a lot longer to get a relief.
Ironically, the book that I read about it, they said that they used it for the train drivers, and they said only one session would get rid of your trauma. So it's
with EMDR.
That's the book I read, because I read, didn't you? I read how it was discovered, and then there was a book about the train drivers, and they said that they'd had somebody commit suicide, for example, sorry to say that in a live broadcast, they would be traumatized about that, and they reckoned that one session would cure it. But maybe that's not been accurate, because
maybe it is accurate. I'm not. I have not used EMDR a great deal, because I just normally use the other approach. I have used EMDR. When I've used it, I've just found it seems to be slower than I'm used to with the other. But EMDR has a very strong evidence base, as does prolonged exposure therapy, by the way. And if anybody's interested, I think the technique was really developed by a lady called Edna Four in America, who started using it with rape victims and found it very effective in treating people who've been victims of rape. As I say, it's much more used in America. It's been used a lot with Vietnam War veterans, for example. But both have good evidence base.
Angela, I see you've got your hand. Oh, sorry, I'll come back to you in a second, Lynn. I see you've got your hand up there, Angela. You're still on mute.
George, this other treatment that you were talking about, would it work? Right, I'm as well just going right into this here. And there's no just doing things by half. My dad is a paedophile, and I only got told this 4 years ago by the police and the social work, because he got caught. I struggle with this on a daily basis. Would that kind of therapy help me, even though he is still alive?
If you're talking about its impact on you,
yes,
then yes, the impact on you is something created by you. It's your mind, it's your feelings, it's your sensations, it's your thoughts, which create the reaction you have to the news about your father, or anything that causes us to feel traumatized. So yes, it's healing you has got nothing to do with your father, what he does, doesn't, has done, or might do in the future.
I mean, because that came out through my court case. In the middle of my court case, that came out. And my dad was my hero. My dad was... Anything happened, I always phoned my dad to tell him first. And then all of a sudden I get a chap at the door and to tell me, if you leave your kids with your dad and anything happens to them, you will be prosecuted. To me, they wouldn't tell me why, so I had to call my dad, and my dad told me that he hadn't touched the kid, he said, but he had been taking pictures off the internet, and you don't need to hear all that. that was kind of enough. So I, and at that point, I actually felt like my world had fell apart. And on a daily basis, I cannot stop thinking about it. And it's as though I'm grieving for a dad that's died, but he's still alive. And I can't deal with the grief because I know that he is going to die, and then I'm going to have to go through a kind of childhood grief for him.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into very deep waters here, Angela. I think what I would just say to you, and I'm happy to talk to you about it afterwards, is yes, it doesn't have to be that way.
Thanks.
I just wanted to say there, for anyone who's had an experience similar to Angela or anything else, I wanted to flag up some things. If you want to be part of the peer support network, you can email Hearts of Ace to hear from other people, because obviously I know that we've brought up some quite heavy stuff here. But if you want to talk to, if you've got any questions for George, if you've got any follow-up to this kind of thing, I'm happy to leave you my email address and put you in touch with him as needed. It's idawson@wavetrust.org as well. So do feel free to reach out if you want to kind of continue this or get into more detail. Jay, I'll let you go, but I do want to leave a little bit of time just to wrap up the live as well. So
yeah,
I'm just going to get a drink of water after that.
It was just
Absolutely.
on the question that you asked about what about healing the perpetrators. For a survivor like me, it's hard to even think that we can heal them, to be honest with you. However, I also understand that if we're to eradicate child abuse, then we need to heal it as well. And I just wanted to say that as well, that I understand that to eradicate child abuse altogether, child sexual abuse, then we need to also have an element of healing in it as well.
Claire, did you want to come in on that? I saw you react to that immediately.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I don't know if we ever fully heal. I think every day is a journey, and every day we just get a little bit better. And I know Wave and Hearts of Ace have been a massive part of my recovery. The tools they've given me to use have been amazing for me and my family. And I just think people need to be aware that it's so debilitating. Like for me, it caused 40 years of severe mental health problems, 25-year drug addiction. It's a really, really heavy, hard place to be, and it's a lot for a human being to carry. But I don't think recovery ever ends. I think we will probably all be in recovery for the rest of our lives.
Thank you, Claire. I think that was really, really important to say there. And feel free to get yourself a glass of water in a moment as well, as Angela has, if you need to. But I think that was absolutely critical. And I can see, yeah, we've got some sharing here as well in the comments, one day at a time. I think that's getting echoed in the comments as well as what you're all saying there. I think we've got about 10 minutes left. So I want to give a time for us all to have a final message. But before that, I realise I've got a message for you there as well, Claire. Flag that up first, as you're saying some really crucial things. But I think we've mentioned Wave, we mentioned Hearts of Ace, we mentioned 70/30, etc. And I know that this is a video that'll probably go out to quite a few new people as well afterwards. So I was wondering, George, if you could take a moment just to talk us through what the differences are between these different things, especially because, a little bit of an announcement, we've actually started a brand new Facebook page for Wave now. We've had the 70/30 one going for a while. That's what we're doing the live stream through, etc. But we've launched a brand new Facebook page as well for Wave. If you want to give that a follow, it started off just today. If you just search on Facebook for Wave Trust, that'll come up. You can keep track of all the great projects we're doing, even beyond the 70/30 campaign. But George, I think it would just be useful to see a little bit about the distinction, but also to all these people who might be passionate about preventing ACEs, preventing, child abuse and neglect. If you could talk us a little bit through the steps involved towards reaching our 70/30 goal.
When I set up Wave, one of the triggers was discovering that in the 50 years from 1945 to 1995, levels of child abuse in this country had not gone down one iota. And that was a statement by the head of the NSPCC in 1995. As a business strategy consultant, I asked myself, if somebody gave me the challenge, end child abuse, how would I go about it as a strategy consultant? And the first thing you do in a strategy study is you survey the current territory of whatever field you're creating a strategy for. And I'd been trained by my business background to look globally, and I looked all over the world at how governments and charities were tackling child abuse. And I found exactly the same thing everywhere. Charities and governments all over the world were tackling child abuse by alleviating the symptoms. They were not tackling the root causes. So I searched for a charity that was tackling the root causes. Again, I looked globally and I couldn't find one. That's what led to me setting up WAVE. And an organization called New Philanthropy Capital once carried out a study of 110 child abuse charities in Britain. And I think we were the only one they found. I'm pretty certain we were the only one they found that was actually preventing it before it happened. All the others were about helping after the event, which of course is hugely important. But we will never eradicate this if you only tackle the symptoms, because it's a bit like if you have a house with a running tap in a bathroom on the first floor and the water is pouring down the stairs, pouring down through the ceilings into the floor below, and you have a multitude of people mopping up the floods, but nobody's turning off the tap. So WAVE has as its fundamental priority, not that we don't support everyone after the event, you've heard today very much that we do, but turning off the taps. And 7030 was created by WAVE in 2009 as a project to help us do that, using some techniques that we had used very successfully in the business world. And what we did was we carried out a study of what was at that time believed to be possible if we got the political will in place to implement the best known methods of tackling the various forms of child abuse. And the answer was, at that time, it was possible to reduce physical and emotional abuse, neglect, and domestic violence by about 70% by the year 2030. Of course, by the way, some people say, why not 100%? Well, of course we want to reduce child abuse by 100%. That's why WAVE was created. But if you're trying to set a goal that you want politicians to sign up to, it has to be a goal that has some realism to it. The 7030 goal was one which had backing from researchers, including leading researchers in the field of child abuse and leading practitioners, for example, in the Metropolitan Police Child Abuse Investigation Command at that time. Unfortunately, at that time, it was not believed by the people we spoke to, and our research ourselves, we did not find proof that said you could reduce child sexual abuse by 70% by 2030. Therefore, at that time, we did not include child sexual abuse in the 70% target. Now, let me be crystal clear. That did not mean that WAVE stopped helping people with child sexual abuse, as you've heard from people like Angela and Claire and Jay today. Nor did it mean that we are stopping our commitment to reduce to the maximum possible child sexual abuse. We just didn't have the research academic backing that said a 70% reduction was possible. And we've been challenged on this recently in Scotland by some people who say, well, why don't you have a target for child sexual abuse? So what we're doing, we're currently carrying out an investigation in Scotland, a commission of inquiry into how to deliver 7030. This follows the fact that every single MP in Scotland and every single member of the Scottish Parliament except one, that's 128 out of 129, are committed to supporting 7030. So we, as a part of our commission of inquiry, we are asking people to give us evidence showing by what percentage you can reduce each of various forms of child sexual abuse, because the problems are very different for example, familial child sexual abuse, stranger child sexual abuse, institutional child sexual abuse. So we're looking at each of these areas separately and inviting evidence along with a forecast backed by evidence, because otherwise forecasts are a bit meaningless, of how much can be achieved. And what I would love to see is that we're in a position to create a specific target for reduction of child sexual abuse, whether it be by 2030 or some other date, that we can also build the same support for that we built for the current 70-30 campaign. So WAVE is working on all of these issues and other ACEs, domestic violence, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, etc., etc. People incarcerated in prisons, and most of you will know about the extensive work we do with people in prisons, and working with politicians. But 70-30 is just one specific campaign within the overall project of WAVE, and WAVE is doing many other things besides 70-30. I hope that answered your question, Isabel.
Thank you. I think definitely that gives a little bit of perspective to people. So WAVE is very much the charity itself that does all kinds of things, including the amazing 70-30 campaign, for which we have all of these brilliant ambassadors with us today. I think, looking at the time, we've got time just to have one final takeaway message from everyone. Let's see, who wants to kick things off in terms of a final message? Angela, I might leave you and your message of hope for last, just because I know quite how important that is. Claire, do you want to start things off there?
Yeah, I've just got like 3 sentences to say and then I'm done. So the first would be, it is not your fault. The second would be to speak even if your voice shakes. And the third one would be, it stops with us.
Thank you, Claire. That is extremely powerful. Thank you. Lynn, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I want to be trailing in Angela's blaze of the hope, because there is hope. I mean, I did start my recovery journey in 1990s, early 1990s. And yes, it's been a journey, but there's been joy. And, you know, I do suffer from CPTSD. If there's a bereavement, I may hit a dip. But, you know, you just get back up, and there is help out there. That's the most important part. There's help out there, and go and find the help, because you can come through this. You know, another one is, George, I want to know more about this prolonged
Exposure therapy.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that. And that's my final word. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lynn. And I think I'll just flag up again some reminders of where people can reach out for help that we can signpost to. So again, if you want to find out more about WAVE and everything we do, get our contact details, etc., you can check out our website, wavetrust.org. If you want to get in touch with Hearts of ACE, and all of their wonderful peer support network of people with lived experience, you can drop them an email at heartsoface@wavetrust.org. And if this has been a particular intense session today and you do want a bit of immediate support there as well, I will highlight the same trigger slide that we had previously there, so you can reach out to NAPAC for a little bit more kind of urgent support if needed, and they've got a brilliant website there, phone number, etc. But please reach out for help. Don't hesitate. You're not on your own, and I think that's really critical to remember. I'll give you just a moment longer to take down any numbers or email addresses, as I know it'll probably take you a second to write that down before we move on to Jay and Angela there. So yeah, Jay, would you mind going next in terms of final messages for people to take away?
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, you might feel as you grow older after it happens to you that your life's just out of control and spiraling and there's no hope at all. But believe you me, I like to think I'm a bit of proof myself that you can turn your life around and you can make a success of yourself by getting the right help and by speaking it. So don't bottle things up. It'll bottle up inside you like a poison. You know, reach out, speak out to somebody, a close friend, relative, doctor, therapist, whoever, peer support group, wife, companion, somebody trusted. Just open up as quick as you can, as soon as you can, and don't be ashamed, don't feel guilty. Especially men, because that was a big thing I felt with shame and guilt, fear. Because trust me, there's a supportive society out there now.
Thanks, Jay. George, do you want to go next so Angela can close all this up after?
Firstly, I'd just like to echo what each of the others have been saying about sharing, speaking, not giving up hope, knowing that it's never too late to change the quality of your life in dealing with these issues. But the particular message I'd give is this. The issues we've been talking about today have been going on for centuries, not years, but centuries. They have been throughout human history a part of life for many people. Our generation is probably the first generation that actually understands that we can stop this, that we can bring an end to it. I don't necessarily say we'll bring an end to it rapidly. I'm old enough that I know I won't be around when that result is achieved, but that doesn't matter. We can contribute to something. Each one of us can contribute to something that will make the difference that one day the world will be free of physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, all domestic violence, all these terrible blights that are ruining so many lives and which very often cycle through generations in ways that seem to be unstoppable historically. But we now know they can be stopped. And every one of you is part of stopping that. And I just want to salute Jay and everyone else in Hearts of Ace and every one of you for being part of that commitment to change the world of the future. There are generations to come who will never know how much they owe to you. Thank you.
Thanks, George. I think I'll echo that with my final message there and say that every single one of you watching this has the power to make a difference, to move closer to this goal of eradicating child sexual abuse, to move closer to the 70-30 goal, etc. Get involved in any way you can. If you're not at the stage where you can do much now, give us a follow. Give us a follow here, give us a follow on what we're doing. Follow Jay, follow Angela, follow the new Wave page. But if you can do something, become a 70-30 ambassador, join in Wave, find a way to move things forward, find a way to start making a difference yourself, because it's very, very easy to feel helpless when you're tackling something that has been going on for centuries, but we do have the power, and I think we've really been able to show that today, luckily. But yeah, Angela, do you want to close things off?
Of course. First of all, I would like to say though, please, if you have the time, even an hour a week, please join Wave and become an ambassador. If you have been a survivor yourself, join us in the Hearts of Ace. Please, your voice will always be heard. You might not want to voice it yourself, but believe me, one of us will do it for you. And always, please never give up hope. Never give up hope. There is always hope out there. If you need us to help you find that hope, we will help you find that hope, because there's always hope out there. And remember, I'm an ambassador.
Thank you so much, Angela. I've now added Never Give Up Hope as one of our go-to banners for these live streams. So I think it's going to become an essential. Should have done it a few live streams ago, but absolutely never ever give up hope. Thank you everyone so much for joining. I think it's been a wonderful session. Thank you, Claire, Lynn, Jay, Angela, for really being so brave today. And thank you, George, for sharing all of your brilliant insight. I hope everyone has a great evening. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.